Danny Flexon here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by legendary boxing journalist Colin Hart. Colin, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Not bad for an old man.
You don't seem to have aged in quite a long time. I need to know what your secret is.
There you go.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll keep the secret to myself.
I don't blame you. We're here for the Joe Joyce press conference. Not the biggest fight in the world against Christian Hammer, but big fights in his future. How good is Joe Joyce in your view?
Well, we won't know yet. I mean, he was good enough to beat Dubois, and I didn't think he was going to beat Dubois. So immediately I'm in to think he's a lot better than people think he is. One thing about Joe, he is a very big boy. And one other thing also is a real tough nut. I don't think there's a heavyweight in the world who's got a better chin than Joe Joyce. And also, he's deceptive. He looks slow, but he's quicker than you think he is. And as I say, he can absorb punches and he can lay on people. What he's got to do is be patient, because he's been a pro now, 6 years? And he's on the fringe of the big one to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. And as we know, Joshua and Usyk are fighting again on August 20. And never mind about retirement and all the rest of it, the winner will fight Fury. But that won't be probably the end of this year or the beginning of next. So Joe has got to be a very patient man and wait, I would think, until the summer of 2023 when he gets his shot. Now the difficulty is he's got to be kept busy. I mean, I know he's been out a long time because of his injury, but it's no good to him. He's got to fight, but they've got to be very careful that they don't make a mistake and he loses and therefore loses his chance at the world title. So it's going to be a very fine balancing act in the next few months for Joe. I mean, obviously, he's expected to take care of Christian Hammer. And of course, if he can't beat Hammer, then there's no point of talking about him fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world.
Now, you mentioned Usyk-Joshua's rematch there. At all disappointed that it's not here in the UK, that they've gone to Saudi?
Yes, of course. It's very disappointing that, Joshua and, let's face it, Fury, they're talking about that being in Saudi if it ever happens. We've got the crowd and we've got the expertise and we've got a fight history in this country, and therefore those fights where British fighters involved deserves to be either in Wembley, Tottenham or even Cardiff.
What do you feel about the allegations, if you like, of sports washing by taking these major events over to Saudi and that region as a whole?
Well, of course, you can argue about the rights and wrongs of going to Saudi all night long, and there are arguments on both sides. I mean, it's all very well the politicians and, shall we say, the bleeding hearts talking about how disgraceful it is for British sportsmen to fight in Saudi. Our government sells the Saudis billions of pounds worth of arms. Now, we also fill up with petrol, which comes from Saudi, in our cars. Where do you draw the line? Why should sports people take the brunt of these protests? Let's protest against government for selling arms to Saudi Arabia.
And getting back to more comfortable territory, Usyk and Joshua's rematch, how do you see that panning out?
Well, I've said this before. I think we're going to see the same again. I think that Usyk has got Josh's number. What I will say, if Usyk's mind is in Ukraine and not in Saudi, then something else might happen. I went to the press conference to launch the British version, to sell it to Britain, Usyk and Joshua. And my impression was Usyk is a very unhappy man. I think his mind is always at home in Ukraine. after all, I know he's got his wife and children now, but he's got family in Ukraine, and he's a Ukrainian, so he feels it deeply what's going on there. And he admitted it's very difficult for him to smile and very difficult for him to sing in this day and age, being a Ukrainian. I mean, if that's on his mind and he's not concentrating 100% on the fight, then he could be in trouble. But he's so skillful, and Joshua tactically was all over the place in the first fight, doing everything he shouldn't do, trying to outbox, a brilliant technician. And obviously, he daren't do the same again in August. But can he nail Usyk? Can he rough him up? Or is Usyk too clever to get involved in that kind of fight?
Colin Hart, always a pleasure. Really, really appreciate it.